awesome song. You guys hot? You know, I was thinking about doing a sermon on hell today, right? No. We have a few people visiting from out of town. There's Emily from Indy. Yeah. Came here to think, see what we're all about, right? And then there's a Sandra from Chicago. I haven't met. There she is right there. Great to have you guys here. Of course, this was an awesome week. It's not over yet, right? We had the men's day out, which you guys saw, the little trophy and all that. It was a lot of fun. We had the tug of war. You know, Shane is still talking about how his shoe wasn't on right. Then we got, okay, it's in the picture, so. All right, then we had the obstacle course. That was, a few people sweating on that one. But I'll have to give the gold star to Brian. Now, what's the story, you may ask? All right, so we have the four teams, and of course, there was dodgeball. And Brian all the rest of his teammates were taken out, except for Brian. And there were three on their team, and he took them out one by one. So, hats off to Brian. So, a lot of fun. I know the women are going to have a lot of fun. We had the TNT thing. That was a lot of work. But for Milwaukee alone, we raised $68,614. All right. And then, on top of that, we also raised $3,772 in tips. So, very phenomenal. Now, I don't know what the total amount is that we'll be receiving because, of course, through that we have to pay for the actual fireworks. And then we got to pay taxes. And then we got to pay for all the equipment and all that kind of stuff. So, we'll see what happens, all right? But this month has been an emotional month, right? We had the Louisville send-off, which is quite amazing that a smaller church like this could plant another church somewhere else. And, of course, we had the party and the sharing and so ripping of hearts. And then, of course, everybody meets at the truck and, and moving them on out. And I got a text from Victor this week. He says it's absolutely scorching down. It's over 100 degrees down there. He says he misses Milwaukee already. So now every time you send out people, and we've sent out quite a few. The last 2 years we've sent out 16 people. That's a ripping of hearts. It was interesting how different the men's day out looked because there was a lot of people already gone. All right? But with this sending out, that's another 2 of the original mission team. So now we're down to 13 original mission team people left, all right? And then there was 13. Okay, so that means there's 56 new people, all new in the last 4 years. So, and then even some of those we've sent out. And what does that do? I mean, it creates a lot of restructuring in the church because you got to raise up people to fill those roles as you send out. And that can create a little bit of, people get a little nervous about, okay, who's discipling me and what region am I going to be and that kind of thing. And there's other things that have happened, people just physically moving around here to different apartments. Of course, then we have our GLCs coming up. Then we have our 4-year anniversary service on the 25th. And you can tend to feel a little unsettled. You can feel like, what's going to happen? I don't know. Someone help me. I don't know. That kind of thing. And this is happening church-wide. So we've sent out, this year it'll be 24 churches this year we're sending out. That's like ridiculous. Of course, it's not just all in America. It's foreign mission fields also. And you go through all this stuff, you say, man, there's a lot of movement. Well, you're in a movement, people move, right? But then you got your own stuff. You got other things that happen. Of course, we had 2 weddings this year already. All right. Now, of those two weddings, both of them married single moms. All right, so that's a little unsettling right there. All right, you saw Levante up here, so he's trying to figure it out. That kind of stuff will throw you. And then you got Malik. Malik's a father, a dad. So, of course, Malik can get a little out there, right? Frank and Maritza having a baby. That'll throw you off, right? So, and there's more to come. You can literally have a meltdown after a while, right in the middle of something. You get that crazed look, and are they okay? I don't think so, that kind of thing. But then you've got other things that can happen. You can lose your job, right? You can get in a car accident. There's death in the family. There's illness. And so our lives can be shaken from time to time. And it's not going to stop. That's just life. The question is, what do you do? What do you do with all that? What is your anchor? What do you put your security in? How do you handle all these things? Now, we're going through a transition, right? We just sent out Louisville and all that in our 4-year anniversary. And so we're going to talk about that today. Last week, Marcus talked about the old chapter. The title of the lesson is The New Chapter. Wow. Yeah, pretty creative. Came up with that myself. Okay, but transition is tough for everybody. But it's a way of life. It happens all the time. So we got to embrace it. We got to figure out, how do we handle change? And every time our faith is challenged on what does this mean? How am I going to handle that? Look in Matthew chapter 14. And I'm going to read one of my favorite passages in the Bible. In the last few years, we've sent out people, and people have risen to the challenge. Give you an example, Quentin. Quentin was baptized two years ago in March, I think. And he raised to the challenge, and guess what? He got sent off. JV, same thing. Raised to the challenge, sent off. And that can make you a little nervous too. I don't want to do well because they're going to send me off. Well, let's look at Matthew chapter 14, starting verse 22. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. Now, we need to understand that Jesus' whole ministry was about transition. Jesus was trying to get these guys ready for when he was leaving. He only had 3 years. It's really quite amazing. And I believe that Jesus had this whole thing planned out. It wasn't random. Oh, hey, this would be kind of cool. I'll walk on water, freak him out. I don't think he did that. I think it was all planned out because he knew he had to teach them certain lessons. Now, in the Mark 6 version of this, it says that they were straining at their oars. This says they were buffeted by the waves. It wasn't an easy time. And imagine you're one of the guys. You're in the boat. and you're working hard against the waves and all that, and all of a sudden you see someone walking on water. And you imagine them just kind of like, oh my gosh, what is that? Look at that. And it's coming towards us. And they cry out in fear. Ah! You imagine how they had a good time making fun of each other. Did you see Peter freaked out, John? That kind of thing. Here you got these big, burly fishermen crying out in fear. And this ghost, as they see it, is walking towards them. And they cry out in fear. And Jesus says, take courage, it is I. Take courage, it is I. Now, when things shake you, where do you turn for comfort? Where do you escape? Video games, movies, how about impurity? Do you go to family? Do you go into hiding? Do you go into ghosting? I learned that new phrase, the ghosting. Or do you go to Jesus? And that's really what this is all about. And our tendency is to try everything else, and Jesus tends to be the last thing. Okay, this is what I just need to go to Jesus. Why isn't he the first thing? Okay, point number one, it is I. That's what Jesus says, it is I. And what this is talking about is Jesus is the source of all security. He says, don't be afraid. It is I. It's Jesus to the rescue. Now, it's not the same if one of us say it. You know, Shane walks in the room, don't worry, it is I. And everybody's like, yeah? What do you do with that? Marcus walks in the room, it's I. Martin, Lavante, Sabrina, it is I. No? Not quite the same impact. There's a certain amount of comfort we can put in each other, but we're not Jesus. And a lot of people tend to put even comfort in the church, which is okay, but it's not the source. A lot of people want to join the church because it's an awesome church. They see the relationships, the joy, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all that kind of stuff, and they tend to make the church God. And Jesus is saying, no, it's me. And so we got to constantly direct people to their quiet time, say, no, this is the source of your security. And people are looking for a lot of security. Why? Because we're fearful. How many times did Jesus say in the New Testament, don't be afraid? It's God's desire that we're not afraid. He wants to take the fear away. But in our minds and in our hearts, we tend to give in to our fears. We just don't trust God. So many of us live in fear. In Romans 8, verse 15, you don't have to turn there. Paul writes, for you did not receive a spirit that makes you a slave again to fear, but you received the spirit of sonship. And a lot of people, hey, I'm a disciple, but why are you so afraid? Why are you giving into this? Are you really walking with Jesus? Now, you got to look at Peter. He takes advantage of the situation, right? Hey, if it's you, Lord, tell me to come to you. What a great idea. Hey, this would be awesome. Now, I can't imagine telling Jesus to do anything. Hey, Jesus, tell me. Telling Jesus to do anything, but he does. And Jesus, he's like, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, yeah, come on. All right? That's point number 2. Point number 2 is come. And see, Jesus wants us to take those steps of faith. But sometimes God calls us and we say no. And God says, listen, hey, I want to do miracles through you, but you're not willing to come. How many miracles could God do through your life, but simply aren't happening because of your fear? You've stopped God from doing miracles. Wow. How about things being way over your head? You're like, no, I can't do this. Just ask someone else. No, God has chosen you. Who are you talking to here? Can't be me. I remember years ago, Barb and I were asked to go plant a church in Queens, New York, right? And we went there with 18 people, and of course the church had all the different, you had the Bronx, you had Brooklyn, boroughs, there you go. You had New Jersey, Staten Island, and so they all met together, and you had a leader overall. Well, what ended up happening is some things happened, and the leaders needed to be taken out. And not only that, they took a number of the other leaders out, and there was only like 3 of them on staff, and I think Tracy was one of them at the time. But all of a sudden, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? You imagine the church like, okay, what's happening? What's going on? And then Kip comes, and Matt and Helen Sullivan come in, and we have conversations, and then all of a sudden, Kip puts his hand on my shoulder and says, okay, buddy, it's on you now. I was like, whoa. I don't even know where I am. I'm getting lost most of the time. And I don't know anybody except for Tracy, all right, Candace, and the 18 people I brought along. All right, and you got quite a few people there. So I'm thinking, what are we going to do? I said, is that all? Kind of making a joke. He said, no. In fact, you're over Boston, Syracuse, and Tampa Bay, too. I'm like, oh, my gosh. Okay, now what do? Do you run? And so we had a decision to make. And we decided to engage in the battle and so on and so forth. And the whole church turned around very rapidly. But it was God doing it. Absolutely. It's one of those things where you know, not me. No, not me. God wanted to do a miracle. And I guess the next special contribution was like through the roof. They never ever had done that. Why? Because people believed. Miracles happen. Do you shrink back or do you embrace? You got to embrace. It's the expectation from Jesus. If Peter didn't come out of the boat, shuts down a miracle. God wants to do miracles through your life. Yes, even you. You got to believe it. You weren't created to be mediocre. It's unacceptable to God. There's an expectation here. In fact, let me show you. Look in Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Getting a little hot in here. Hebrews chapter 10, starting in verse 37. For in just a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one will live by faith. And if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased with him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who believe and are saved. All right, you look at this passage, basically God's saying, I'm not happy when you shrink back. And in fact, you can do some destructive things to yourself because of your lack of faith. Not only do you affect you affect other people around you. You can bring people down. Or you can inspire them by living a miraculous life. You're not meant to be where you're at. I don't care where you're at. You're always to be taking it higher because we worship a God of miracles. When's the last time you saw a miracle in your life? And we got to get serious about this because God is serious about it. I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in Stevens Point, born there. And Stevens Point is a small city. And my parents said, we're moving to Green Bay, the metropolis of Green Bay. 91,000 people. It was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge city. And then we went back to school at Point, joined the church, and God said, hey, you know, you're meant for better things. And Barb and I decided to move to Milwaukee. Oh, Milwaukee is like 1 million people here. Oh, what are we going to do? We're all going to die. Then we were called to go to Chicago. I was like, oh, what did I get into here? I was scared. Now, the evangelist discipling me, I was like, I got to find some wood somewhere. He said, there's a tree, go hug it. Not the same. I remember going through the toll booths, waiting for an hour at least, getting through this, and then I get through it and it's just as full on the other side. I was like, oh my God. Then we go to Queens, New York. You got to go live there. That's called the baptism by fire, okay? You got to live in New York for a while to experience it, all right? But we're there, and like I shared earlier, it was crazy, all sorts of crazy things. And then I remember coming back, that we were asked to speak in Chicago. I came back to Chicago. I thought, oh, Chicago is so much easier. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And it really is all about perspective. Then I remember coming to Milwaukee for the first time in many years. And we're in the airport, we're getting a rental car, and the woman goes, how was your flight? And I was like, I want to kiss you. How was my flight? Nobody asked me that. Not New York. Oh my gosh. But at one time, I was scared to death of Milwaukee, and now it's like heaven. All about perspective. That's your faith. How do you view your situation? In God's eyes, it's nothing. If only we would believe. Let's go back to Matthew 14. I'm coming. Matthew 14. Okay, so Peter gets out and walks on water. But then he saw the wind, the waves, and he begins to sink. All right, let's look at it. Verse 28. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me! Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? Of course, Peter commanding Jesus once again to do something. Save me! Point number 3 is focus. Why did Peter sink? Well, he took his focus off Jesus. Now, do you guys have any distractions in life? Yes. Oh my gosh. They're everywhere. Sometimes that's why you want to escape. You want to just go in your room and hide. People won't leave me alone. But Peter started looking at the wind and the waves. And you know, Satan wants to distract you. He wants you to take your eyes off Jesus and focus on all the problems you got. You know, that's one of the great things about studying the Bible with people. Get in their lives, and they tell you some of the most horrendous things. What happened to you? Oh my gosh. Then all of a sudden your life doesn't seem so bad. I got it good. And it reminds you too sometimes of the things you used to do. And all of a sudden your spirits are lifted. But if you're not in the battle, that's a tool that God can't use. There's a lot of things that are going to make you fear. Well, what was Peter's security? It was the boat. All right, he gets out of the boat, and he starts, hey, this is working, this is awesome. But, you know, the further he gets away from the boat, the further he gets away from his security. And, you know, when he's this far out, he can still lunge back, right? But the further you go, the scarier it becomes when you leave your security. And then he started looking at all the things that could go wrong. And he begins to sink. Now, I don't understand, if you think about it, Peter walked on water. Anybody else ever do that other than Jesus? You would have thought Jesus just like, Peter, you're awesome. You just walked on water. But that wasn't Jesus' spirit. He said, why did you doubt? Why'd you do it? But let's back up a little bit here. Some people won't even get out of the boat. Let's watch Johnny do it. Let's have Maxime go out there and see what happens. Do you focus more on the obstacles than Jesus? Some people want all the ducks in a row before they say, okay. Well, what about this? What about that? What if this happens? And we call that the paralysis of analysis. You don't move forward because you're always analyzing everything to death. And you don't move forward. And you shrink back. I think about planting Louisville. And there's no way you can prepare them enough because Louisville is in Milwaukee. And you try your best to figure out, okay, what about this, what about that? But there comes a point in time then you got to pull the trigger. You got to say, okay, go. It's time. Let's do this thing. And of course, they get there and there's all sorts of stuff that, obstacles and all that. And that's just Satan's plan. That's what he does. Why? He wants it stopped. If he can get them faithless, they'll stop. And, they'll call and they'll ask me, well, this happened. And I said, well, what do you expect? That's the reality of it. There's going to be winds and waves wherever you go. So what areas have stopped you? Areas of your life? What are the possible fears versus focusing on Jesus? And as a result, once again, there's no miracles. Point number 4. Why doubt? Talked a little bit about this. Peter begins to sink and he cries out. And Jesus says, why do you doubt? I'm right here. I'm standing right in front of you. I'm walking on water right in front of you. Dude, you blew it. I don't think he blew it. He walked on water. Difference between the way I think and the way Jesus thinks. Jesus understood that people will only rise to your level of expectation. If you don't expect people to do awesome miracles, they won't. Because if you don't believe in them, who's going to? And Jesus is like, I got to get these guys ready. Because they're going to take over Christianity after I leave. They have got to believe. And so he walks on water. Peter doubts. He sinks. And now that's burned into Peter's memory from here on out. Hey, remember when you walked on water? This is nothing. Not a problem. You walked on water. Yeah, but I doubted and I sank. You walked on water. And that's the battle in our minds. What do you go back to in your life where you saw a miracle? Our lives are full of miracles. But we don't think about them. We're distracted. The fact that you have a physical body is a miracle. There are so many things that could go wrong with your body. It's not coincidental. What keeps your heart beating? What keeps your blood flowing? What about those little things in your body, the cells, those things moving around? What keeps those things going? What keeps the multiplying and all that? Your organs working. You can't say, okay, liver, keep going. Doesn't work like that. Just breathing, sleeping at night. You can't force yourself to breathe. Some people snore, okay? Whole nother sermon. But here's the thing, it's a miracle. The fact that you can see in color. Astronomical. But we don't dwell on that. Oh, I got to pay my gas bill. Oh, my gosh. It's a miracle happening all over here. Maritza and Frankie are having a baby. All right? Now, I know that when that baby comes out, they're going to go, oh my gosh, this is miraculous. And you're kind of like taken back. It's overwhelming. I remember when Tracy was born, it was like, wow, everything's there. We're not going to go there, okay? But anyways, the miracles are everywhere. There's no reason that the sun doesn't just explode tomorrow. Boom, we're done. We are totally out of that control. You want to be afraid? Think about that, okay? But God says, listen, I'm in control. The seasons, everything. What are you worried about? I'm standing right in front of you. Miracle upon miracle, and you're scared? What can I not do? There's an expectation to take you to another level. Barb and I are going to do that. And this is why we're discipling ministry. Maybe you don't like this. People are challenging you. Why? Because there's an expectation. You can't stay where you're at. If you're not going forward, you're going backward. People, sometimes they don't like discipling because they don't want to be challenged. So you don't want to grow? Is that what you're saying? Do you think Jesus would challenge you? Absolutely. It's like a coach with a basketball player. He's going to hammer on him to get everything out of him because he believes that they can do more. God believes you can do more. You take it places you've never imagined unless you shrink back. There's a quote from Robert Kennedy. He says, some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not. That's got to be our spirit. There's a difference between a mediocre ministry and one that does miracles. Last 6 months, I think, was miraculous for us. When you lead a church and you see things from that perspective, it's different. For us, we sent out 8 people this year already. 5 of those were full-time staff. And I've talked about this, and I'll keep talking about it because it's a miracle. And I shared about where Quentin was. He's skyrocketing. Now, Tim will tell you, Tim and Lynn, 2 years ago, where was he at? It's miraculous, the changes he's made. So much so that John Causey says, I want this guy. That's quite a compliment. It's quite a compliment that we send out 2 couples that were region leaders. All right, the Holders, right? They ended up going to Seattle. When they got here, initially, they weren't doing well. And now look at them. Montanos, same thing. All right, that means there's a lot of change here. Those are some top leaders gone. That means you need to raise up. That means you need to walk on water. You got to take it to the next level. But the question is, where are you going to be at a year from now? Are you going to get out of the boats? Or are you going to give in to fear and doubt? And you will be called. You'll be called to do things beyond your ability. That's exciting. And you can preach about it for the rest of your life. That was you? Yeah. I got with the guy that studied the Bible and baptized me. He was in town. He studied with me in 1982. And we sat down, we were talking, and he said, tell me what's happened. Last time I really got with him was in 89. And I was like, my life's been awesome. I've far exceeded my expectations. It's not me. It's me allowing God to work. And we went on, and he basically shared about his life. But then he showed me a picture of Barb and I and a good friend of ours, a guy that we met in Malaysia and converted here in Milwaukee. And I was like, boy, do we look different. And I remember thinking, boy, if I knew what I know now, how would I respond? Would I have such little faith in the beginning? Or would I be scared to death because of all the suffering I've gone through? That's my choice. Where will you be at a year from now? What miracles will you share? And God wants to do miracles through all of us. Will you focus on Jesus? Milwaukee needs us, guys. It's bad. There's a lot of suffering out there. And we're called to change the world around us. Jesus had an impact every single place, and so should we. Milwaukee doesn't know what you know. You got to share the wealth. Milwaukee needs you to rescue them. So I'm going to close with a challenge. Don't resist when God calls you. Don't shrink back. Let's change the atmosphere of Milwaukee. Let's change the national view of Milwaukee. Let's honor God, and to God be the glory. Amen.